My name is Maya Frost. I am 24 years old and an undergraduate student in a university. The email notification lit up my phone at exactly 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. I was sitting in my cramped apartment, surrounded by stacks of research papers and half-empty coffee cups. My fingers trembled as I opened the message from the National Education Innovation Foundation. We regret to inform you that your application was not selected for the grant award this year. I read it 3 times, feeling my chest tighten with each word. 6 months of work. 6 months of pouring my heart into that essay about accessible education for homeless youth. 6 months of late nights and sacrificed sleep, all for nothing. I closed my laptop and pressed my palms against my eyes, trying not to cry. My roommate Sienna walked past my room, her designer heels clicking against our wooden floor. She didn't even glance my way. I had submitted that application 3 days before the deadline, triple-checked everything, and even had Professor Warren reviewed it. The rejection felt like a punch to the stomach. I needed this grant. I needed it to prove that my research mattered, that the kids I tutored at the Harbor Street shelter mattered. But most of all, I needed it to pay for my final year of graduate school. My student loans were already crushing me. 2 weeks later, I was walking through campus when I saw the announcement board. A large poster caught my eye, decorated with the foundation's logo and a photograph I recognized instantly. It was Sienna, my roommate, smiling wide, holding an oversized check for $1 million. The headline read, "Local graduate student wins prestigious education grant." My legs felt weak. I stepped closer, reading the description beneath her photo. The grant was for innovative approaches to accessible education in underserved communities. The exact topic of my essay. The exact words I had used in my title. My hands started shaking. This had to be a coincidence. Sienna was studying business marketing, not education. She had never mentioned anything about homeless youth or community outreach. I pulled out my phone and searched for the foundation's website. There was the list of winners. Sienna Blake, first place, $1 million. I clicked on the abstract of her winning essay. My vision blurred as I read the opening paragraph. Those were my words. Not similar words. Not inspired by my ideas. My exact sentences, rearranged slightly, but unmistakably mine. Felt sick. I stumbled back to our apartment, my mind racing. How did this happen? When did she even see my essay? I kept my laptop password protected. I always saved my work on a secure cloud. But then I remembered. 3 months ago, Sienna had asked to borrow my laptop because hers was being repaired. I had been in the shower when she needed to print something urgent for class. I had given her my password without thinking twice. We had been roommates for 2 years. I trusted her. That trust now felt like the stupidest decision I had ever made. I entered our apartment quietly. Sienna was in the kitchen, talking loudly on the phone, laughing about celebration plans. I walked straight to my room and locked the door. I opened my laptop and checked my essay files. Everything was still there, dated from 6 months ago. But there was no way to prove she had accessed them. No way to prove she had stolen my work. I thought about confronting her immediately, but something stopped me. I needed evidence. I needed proof. I needed to think clearly before I made any moves. That Thursday night, I went to the Harbor Street shelter like I did every week. This place had become my second home over the past year. The building was old and worn with cracked paint and flickering lights, but it was warm and safe. I volunteered here teaching basic literacy and job skills to anyone who walked through the doors. Tonight, I was scheduled to tutor Mrs. Abigail Rosewood, an elderly woman who had been coming to my sessions for 3 months. She was thin and frail, always wearing the same gray cardigan and faded jeans. Her silver hair was usually pulled back in a messy bun. But her eyes were sharp and intelligent, always watching, always learning. She never talked much about her past, and I never pushed. Everyone here had stories they weren't ready to share. "Good evening, Maya," she said softly as she sat down at our usual corner table. Her voice was gentle but clear. "Good evening, Mrs. Rosewood," I replied, forcing a smile despite the weight crushing my chest. "How was your week?" She studied my face for a long moment. "Difficult, I imagine. You look troubled." I hesitated, then decided there was no harm in sharing. Mrs. Rosewood had become something like a friend to me over these months. She was educated, well-spoken, and always offered thoughtful insights during our lessons. "Someone stole my work," I said quietly, pulling out the reading materials I had prepared. "Someone I trusted. And now they're being rewarded for it while I have nothing." Mrs. Rosewood nodded slowly, her weathered hands folding on the table. "That is a painful betrayal. But tell me, Maya, do you still have your knowledge, your experience, your genuine connection to this work?" I thought about the kids I tutored here every week, about the relationships I had built, about the real understanding I had gained from living this work, not just writing about it. "Yes," I admitted. "I still have all of that." "Then you have everything that matters," she said. "The thief has only words on paper. They do not have the truth behind those words." Her words comforted me slightly, but the anger still burned. We began our lesson, working through reading comprehension exercises. Mrs. Rosewood was brilliant. She picked up concepts faster than some of my university classmates. It made me wonder about her past, about how someone so intelligent ended up here. The following Monday, I received an email that made my blood run cold. It was from the National Education Innovation Foundation, addressed to all grant applicants. They were hosting a showcase event in 6 weeks where winners would present their research plans and early findings. The event would be televised and attended by major education donors from across the country. Sienna would have to present my work. My stomach churned with a mixture of rage and grim satisfaction. She didn't know the first thing about accessible education or homeless youth services. She had never set foot in a shelter, never spent hours building trust with marginalized communities. She had stolen words, but she couldn't steal understanding. I wondered how she would pull this off. Then I realized she would probably try to fake it, hire consultants, maybe even visit a shelter or two for photo opportunities. People like Sienna always found a way to manipulate situations to their advantage. That evening I confronted her. She was in the living room, surrounded by shopping bags from expensive stores. "I saw you won the education grant," I said, keeping my voice steady. She looked up with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh yes, isn't it amazing? I've been working on that proposal for months." "Really?" I asked, stepping closer. "Because I wrote an essay on the exact same topic, about accessible education for homeless youth. Same title structure. Same framework." Her smile faltered for just a second before returning, wider and more defensive. "Maya, education is a broad field. Lots of people research similar topics. You can't claim ownership of an entire subject area." "I'm not talking about the subject," I said, my voice harder now. "I'm talking about specific ideas, specific phrases. Did you access my laptop when you borrowed it 3 months ago?" Her face flushed red, but she stood up, gathering her shopping bags. "I can't believe you're accusing me of plagiarism because you're jealous. Maybe your essay just wasn't good enough. Maybe mine was better. That's not theft, that's competition." She walked to her room and slammed the door. I stood there, shaking with anger and helplessness. She was right about one thing. I had no proof, no witnesses, no digital trail that I could trace. It would be my word against hers, and she had the grant committee's approval on her side. I felt trapped and powerless. But I wasn't going to give up. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Sienna scramble. She bought books about education reform, hired a photographer to take pictures of her visiting community centers, and spent hours on calls with what I assumed were consultants. She was building a facade, and it was working. Her social media filled with inspirational posts about serving underserved communities and making a difference. People commented with praise and admiration. Made me sick. Meanwhile, I continued my work at the shelter. Every Thursday, I met with Mrs. Rosewood and the other participants. I taught reading skills to teenagers who had aged out of foster care. I helped adults prepare for job interviews. I listened to their stories, their struggles, their hopes. This work was real. Mattered. Couldn't be faked or bought. One Thursday evening, Mrs. Rosewood surprised me with a question. This person who stole from you, will they have to present their work publicly? He nodded. Yes, in about 4 weeks. At a big televised showcase event. She smiled slightly, a mysterious expression crossing her face. Then perhaps the truth will reveal itself when they are tested. Paper words are easy to steal. Understanding cannot be copied. 3 weeks before the showcase, I received an unexpected phone call. The woman on the line introduced herself as Dr. Vivian Cartwright, Program Director for the National Education Innovation Foundation. My heart raced. Had they discovered the plagiarism? Was I about to get the justice I deserved? Ms. Frost, she said professionally, we're reaching out to several graduate students who applied for this year's grant. We're looking for community partners to participate in our showcase event. Individuals who are actively working in underserved education spaces. Your application mentioned volunteer work at Harbor Street Shelter. Is that correct? I confirmed, confused about where this was going. Wonderful, she continued. We'd like to invite you to attend the showcase as a community panel member. You would sit alongside our grant winners and provide perspective on real-world implementation of educational programs. Would you be interested? I almost laughed at the irony. They wanted me to sit next to Sienna and validate her stolen work. But then I realized this was an opportunity. A chance to be in the room, to ask questions, to potentially expose her fraud in front of everyone. Yes, I said firmly. I would be very interested. Dr. Cartwright sounded pleased. She explained that I would be compensated for my time and that my participation would look excellent on my academic resume. She also mentioned that the panel would include several distinguished educators and community leaders. One name caught my attention, Dr. Abigail Chan Rosewood, chair of the grant committee and former professor at MIT. My breath caught. Rosewood. Like Mrs. Rosewood from the shelter. But this couldn't be the same person. Dr. Abigail Chan Rosewood was a legendary figure in education research, someone who had published groundbreaking work on equity and access before mysteriously retiring a few years ago. The elderly woman I tutored was just Mrs. Rosewood, a quiet, humble shelter resident. The coincidence nagged at me, but I pushed it aside. I had bigger concerns. That evening, I didn't tell Sienna about my invitation to the showcase. I wanted it to be a surprise. I wanted to see her face when she realized I would be sitting on that panel, watching her try to present my work as her own. 2 weeks before the showcase, Sienna's anxiety became visible. She snapped at me over small things, dishes in the sink, noise in the evening, my presence in shared spaces. She was unraveling under the pressure of maintaining her lie. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. One evening, I overheard her on the phone with someone. Her voice strained and desperate. I need you to coach me better. The panel is going to ask detailed questions, and I can't just memorize talking points. I need to sound like I actually know this stuff. There was a pause. I don't care how much it costs. This grant is worth $1 million. Whatever you charge is worth it. So she had hired a coach. Someone to help her fake expertise she didn't have. I wondered how much money she was spending to maintain this fraud. Meanwhile, my Thursday sessions at the shelter continued. Mrs. Rosewood had missed the previous week, which was unusual. When she returned, she looked tired but determined. I apologize for my absence, she said, settling into her chair. I had some important matters to attend to. But I'm here now. And I'm looking forward to our lesson. We worked through a complex reading about educational policy. Mrs. Rosewood absorbed every detail, asked insightful questions, and made connections I hadn't even considered. Her intelligence was remarkable. Mrs. Rosewood, I said carefully, can I ask you something personal? You don't have to answer if you're not comfortable. She looked at me with those sharp, knowing eyes. You may ask. You're incredibly educated. Your comprehension is beyond most people I've taught, including university students. What brought you here? To the shelter. She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the worn table. Life can change very quickly, Maya. Circumstances can shift in ways you never anticipate. I lost things that mattered to me, my home, my position, my sense of security. But I also gained something valuable, perspective. Understanding the systems I once studied from a distance, but now experience firsthand. He paused, meeting my eyes. Sometimes you have to lose everything to see the truth clearly. Her words felt heavy with meaning I couldn't quite grasp. Before I could ask more, she changed the subject, directing us back to the lesson. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Mrs. Rosewood was more than she appeared to be. 1 week before the showcase, I received the event agenda. My stomach dropped as I read through the schedule. Sienna was listed as the keynote presenter. She would have 30 minutes to present her research proposal, followed by a 15-minute question and answer session with a panel. The panel members were listed: Dr. Vivian Cartwright, 3 education donors, 2 community leaders, and Dr. Abigail Chan Rosewood as chair. Then, at the bottom, my name appeared as a community partner representative. The event would be held at the prestigious Riverside Convention Center and live-streamed to thousands of viewers. This was bigger than I had imagined. Sienna would be exposed on a massive stage. That evening, Sienna came home late, carrying folders stuffed with papers. She looked exhausted and scared. For the first time since this began, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. She knew she was in over her head. "Big week coming up," I said, casually from the couch. She jumped, not having noticed me. "Yeah," she said shortly, hurrying to her room. "Very big week." I smiled to myself. The truth was coming. The night before the showcase, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, replaying everything in my mind. Tomorrow, Sienna would stand in front of cameras and influential people, presenting work she had stolen from me. And I would be sitting on the panel watching it happen. Part of me wanted to expose her immediately, to stand up and shout the truth. But another part of me knew that patience would be more powerful. Let her present. Let her try to answer questions. Let her reveal her own ignorance. I heard Sienna pacing in her room until nearly 3 in the morning. At some point, I drifted into restless sleep, dreaming of shelter classrooms and stolen words floating through the air like paper birds. When I woke, the morning sun was streaming through my window. Today was the day. I dressed carefully in the one professional outfit I owned, a simple navy dress and black flats. Nothing fancy but clean and respectful. I looked at myself in the mirror and took a deep breath. Whatever happened today, I had the truth on my side. That had to count for something. The Riverside Convention Center was massive and intimidating. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings. Marble floors reflected the morning light. People in expensive suits and designer dresses filled the lobby, chatting and networking. I felt completely out of place. A staff member checked my name on the list and directed me to the green room where panel members were gathering. My heart pounded as I walked down the elegant hallway. When I entered the green room, several people were already there, drinking coffee and making small talk. Dr. Cartwright spotted me and waved me over. "Maya, so glad you could join us. Let me introduce you to the panel." She walked me around the room, introducing me to donors and community leaders. Everyone was polite but clearly wondering what a young graduate student was doing among such distinguished guests. Then Dr. Cartwright gestured to a woman sitting alone in the corner, reviewing papers. "And this is our committee chair, Dr. Abigail Chan Rosewood." The woman looked up and my world tilted. It was her. Mrs. Rosewood from the shelter. But she looked completely different. Her silver hair was styled elegantly. She wore a tailored charcoal suit and pearl earrings. Her posture was straight and commanding. But those eyes, those sharp, intelligent eyes, were unmistakable. "Hello, Maya," she said with a slight smile. "It's good to see you in this setting." My mouth opened but no words came out. Dr. Cartwright looked between us, confused. "You two know each other." "Ms. Frost has been my tutor at Harbor Street Shelter for the past 3 months," Dr. Rosewood said calmly. She's an excellent teacher and a dedicated volunteer. I've been observing her work quite closely. The room suddenly felt too hot. My head spun with questions. Dr. Abigail Chen Rosewood, the famous MIT professor, had been living at the shelter? Attending my tutoring sessions. Watching me this whole time. I don't understand, I whispered. She stood and walked over to me. Her presence suddenly commanding in a way it had never been at the shelter. I took a sabbatical from my regular life 2 years ago, she explained. I wanted to understand the communities I had spent decades studying from academic towers. So I lived among them. I stayed at shelters, attended programs, experienced the barriers and challenges firsthand. It was the most valuable research of my career. She paused, her eyes locked on mine. And it allowed me to meet remarkable people like you. Before I could process this revelation, a staff member announced that the showcase would begin in 10 minutes. Panel members needed to take their seats in the auditorium. Dr. Rosewood, I couldn't think of her as Mrs. Rosewood anymore, walked beside me as we headed to the auditorium. You knew, I said quietly, about the plagiarism, about Sienna stealing my work. She nodded. I read your original essay when you mentioned working on it during one of our sessions. You showed me excerpts, asked for my thoughts on your arguments. Then I read the winning submission. The similarities were impossible to miss. Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you disqualify her immediately? Because I wanted to see how far she would go, Dr. Rosewood said. I wanted to document not just the theft, but the fundamental lack of understanding she would demonstrate. Words on paper can be stolen, but authentic knowledge, genuine relationships with communities, real experience, those cannot be faked. Today, that truth will become very clear. We entered the auditorium. Cameras were positioned around the room. The seats were filling with attendees. And there, backstage, I could see Sienna pacing nervously, clutching her note cards. The showcase began with opening remarks from Dr. Cartwright. She spoke about the importance of innovation in education and the Foundation's commitment to supporting groundbreaking research. Then she introduced Sienna as the first-place grant winner. Sienna walked onto the stage, smiling brightly despite the fear I could see in her eyes. She looked polished and professional in an expensive burgundy suit. The large screen behind her displayed the title, Breaking Barriers, Accessible Education for Marginalized Youth. My title, my words, my work. She began her presentation, reading from her carefully prepared script. She talked about educational inequity, about the need for community-based approaches, about building trust with marginalized populations. Everything she said was technically correct because it came from my research. But her delivery was hollow. She spoke like someone reading facts from a textbook, not someone who had lived and breathed this work. I watched the panel members taking notes. Some looked impressed by her words. Others looked skeptical. Dr. Rosewood sat perfectly still, her face unreadable, watching Sienna with the focus of a scientist observing an experiment. Sienna finished her prepared presentation and opened the floor for questions. Dr. Cartwright asked the first question, something basic about implementation timelines. Sienna answered smoothly. She had clearly prepared for surface-level questions. Then one of the community leaders asked something more specific. You mentioned building trust with homeless youth. Can you describe a specific interaction that shaped your understanding of their needs? Sienna hesitated. Well, there have been many interactions. It's hard to choose just one specific example. Try, the leader pressed gently. Sienna stumbled through a vague story about visiting a shelter and talking to some teenagers. It was clearly fabricated, full of generic details and lacking any authentic emotion or insight. I saw several panel members exchange glances. Then Dr. Rosewood spoke for the first time. Her voice calm but penetrating. Ms. Blake, your essay mentions a specific tutoring program at Harbor Street Shelter. Can you tell us about the structure of that program? How many hours per week? What subjects are covered? Who are the regular participants? The color drained from Sienna's face. The program is still in development. I haven't finalized all those details yet. Dr. Rosewood leaned forward slightly. But your essay described it in past tense, as if the program was already operational. Were you documenting existing work or proposing future work? Sienna's hands shook as she gripped the podium. Both. I was describing what I had observed and what I planned to expand. I see, Dr. Rosewood said. And during your observations at Harbor Street Shelter, did you happen to meet any of the regular volunteers or participants? The room was silent. Every eye was on Sienna. She opened her mouth, closed it, then said weakly, I don't recall specific names. Dr. Rosewood stood up slowly, her presence commanding the entire room. Ms. Blake, I am going to ask you a direct question, and I expect a truthful answer. Did you write the essay that won this grant, or did someone else write it? The auditorium erupted in whispers. Cameras zoomed in on Sienna's face, which had gone completely white. Of course I wrote it. This is my research. Dr. Rosewood pulled out a tablet from her bag. I have here the digital metadata from the original essay file, showing it was created 6 months ago on a laptop registered to Maya Frost. I also have documentation of tutoring sessions where Ms. Frost discussed this exact research with me, 3 months before your submission date. Sienna looked like she might faint. Her mouth moved but no sound came out. Dr. Rosewood continued, her voice firm but not cruel. For the past 3 months, I have been living at Harbor Street Shelter as part of my research on educational equity. I have attended every Thursday tutoring session led by Maya Frost. I have watched her build genuine relationships with marginalized community members. I have seen her knowledge, her compassion, her dedication to this work. She gestured to me. Ms. Frost is the true author of the winning essay. And more importantly, she is the genuine practitioner of the work described in it. You, Ms. Blake, stole her words, but you could never steal her understanding or her authentic commitment to these communities. The room exploded. Journalists scrambled to take notes. Cameras flashed. Donors and attendees talked over each other in shock. Sienna stood frozen on stage, exposed and humiliated before hundreds of people and thousands watching the live stream. Dr. Cartwright stood up, her face a mixture of horror and anger. Ms. Blake, this is an extremely serious accusation. Do you have any evidence to refute these claims? Sienna tried to speak, but her voice came out as a broken whisper. She had no defense. No evidence. No way out. After a long, agonizing silence, she simply walked off the stage, her expensive heels echoing in the shocked quiet of the auditorium. Security personnel followed her. Dr. Cartwright turned to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, please excuse this disruption. The Foundation takes academic integrity extremely seriously. We will be conducting a thorough investigation, but based on the preliminary evidence presented by Dr. Rosewood, it appears we have made a grave error. He turned to me. Ms. Frost, would you please join us on stage? My legs felt like water as I stood. The walk to the stage felt endless. When I reached the podium where Sienna had stood just moments before, I looked out at hundreds of faces staring back at me. Dr. Rosewood stood beside me, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder, the same gesture she had made countless times during our tutoring sessions at the shelter. Maya, Dr. Cartwright said, I apologize on behalf of our entire foundation. If Dr. Rosewood's evidence confirms what we believe to be true, you are the rightful winner of this grant. The next hour passed in a blur. The showcase was temporarily suspended while Foundation lawyers reviewed the digital evidence Dr. Rosewood had compiled. They examined file metadata, timestamps, email records, and photographs Dr. Rosewood had quietly taken during our tutoring sessions, documenting my work with the shelter community. It was all there. Undeniable proof that I had written the essay months before Sienna submitted it. Dr. Rosewood had been gathering evidence the entire time, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal the truth. When the showcase resumed, Dr. Cartwright made an official announcement. The grant was being transferred to me, effective immediately. But that wasn't all. Dr. Rosewood stepped up to the microphone and made an announcement that stunned the entire room. As many of you know, I stepped away from traditional academic work 2 years ago to conduct immersive research on educational equity. That work is now complete, and I am ready to return, but in a different capacity. I am founding the Rosewood Foundation for Community-Based Education, dedicated to supporting genuine grassroots educational initiatives in underserved communities. This foundation will focus on elevating voices like Maya's, practitioners who don't just study these communities from a distance but work alongside them with respect and authentic commitment. She turned to face me directly. Maya, I would like you to be the foundation's first executive director. Your grant funding will be absorbed into a larger fellowship that includes a full doctoral scholarship, a living stipend, and resources to expand your work at Harbor Street Shelter into a model program that can be replicated across the country. You will have the support, funding, and platform to transform your vision into reality. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what was happening. 1 hour ago, I was a struggling graduate student whose work had been stolen. Now I was being offered an opportunity that exceeded my wildest dreams. My voice cracked. I don't know what to say. Dr. Rosewood smiled, the same warm smile she had given me during countless tutoring sessions. Say yes, Maya. Say yes to the work you were already doing. Say yes to the communities you already serve. Say yes to using your voice and your truth to create change. Tears streamed down my face as I nodded. Yes. Yes, I say yes. The auditorium erupted in applause. Cameras captured every moment. And somewhere in that crowd, I knew Sienna was watching her fraud collapse while my truth lifted me higher than she had ever imagined possible. 3 months later, I stood in the newly renovated community center attached to Harbor Street Shelter. The Rosewood Foundation had funded a complete transformation. Bright classrooms, new computers, a library, and spaces for job training and counseling. Dr. Rosewood stood beside me as we cut the ribbon for the grand opening. She had become my mentor, my colleague, and my friend. The theft that had once devastated me had led to something far greater than a simple grant. It had exposed the difference between stolen words and lived truth. It had revealed that authenticity cannot be faked, that genuine service creates connections that transcend any deception. Sienna had disappeared from public view. Last I heard, she had withdrawn from graduate school and moved to another state. The foundation had decided not to pursue legal action against her, considering the public humiliation punishment enough. I didn't hate her anymore. I actually felt sorry for her. She had gambled everything on a lie and lost everything as a result. As I looked around the bustling center filled with students, volunteers, and community members, I realized something important. The work I had been doing all along, the relationships, the service, the commitment, that had always been the real prize. The recognition and resources were wonderful, but they simply amplified what was already true. That kindness, authenticity, and genuine dedication to serving others creates a foundation that no theft can ever shake. That truth had come to light, just as Dr. Rosewood had promised it would. And it had changed everything.